This morning we're going to look at the book of Hebrews. And as we come around this book and consider its meaning, I rather grandiosely thought we would look at the Jesus of Hebrews, and I've got no further than verse 3 of chapter 1. So if you're looking for a complete synopsis of the book of Hebrews, I'm not going to give it to you. But last week, not this week, but last week just gone, our Take Fives were based on the book of Hebrews, so you'd have had a wider idea there. Why was this book written? Well, many of the early Jewish believers, it's no surprise to us, have been called Hebrews. It's a book to Jewish Christians, virtually exclusively. And what you had was those who had accepted Jesus and were following him wholeheartedly. Then you had those who had intellectually accepted Jesus but hadn't quite made a commitment to him. And then you had Jews who had actually said, well, no, we're going to wait for Messiah to come. And so Hebrews is written into this group, particularly those who had accepted Christ but was being persecuted for accepting Christ by other Jews. And so what they begin to do, and what this letter does, is becomes a word of exaltation to them. If you look in Hebrews 13:22, we discover that the writer of Hebrews says, I have written you this word of exhortation. And that's quite interesting, because lots of people debate about who wrote the book of Hebrews. Some say it was Paul the apostle. Others say it was Barnabas. Others say it was Apollos. Some say we don't know. I think probably we don't know. But I romantically, and I do not say thus saith the Lord on this, please understand, this little bit is just my opinion, but I romantically like the idea that it was Barnabas, the apostle that was known as an encourager, because he's the sort of person who doesn't want his name to anything. That's just a romantic idea. I like the romance of that, but I'm not saying thus saith the Lord. The bottom line is God inspired it, and that's why it's in the Bible. And it's so literally packed full. I mean, I don't know if you've seen those adverts for, like, I don't know if it's a cranberries or blueberry juice or whatever. They're comparing it to orange juice. And they say there's like so many oranges in this orange juice, but there's like millions of these cranberries in this one thing of cranberries. You get more out of that. And that's a bit like Hebrews. There's probably more in the book of Hebrews than I can spend the next 7 or 8 weeks on. And so what we're going to do is just look at the first few verses and try and encapsulate something of what the writer of Hebrews says about Christ. You see, Hebrews makes it clear to Jewish believers, but also to us, that there is no one else apart from Jesus. If we want to be saved, if we want to go to heaven, Jesus is the only way. And so therefore, sometimes we'll read Hebrews and we'll get a little bit confused by it because we don't understand all the Jewish flavor of what's going on. Most of us here haven't been brought up as Jewish. Most of us will be classed as Gentile believers. And so therefore, some of the analogies, some of the things that are used, we would need deeper study in the Old Testament and Jewish custom to actually understand what's going on. So I thought what I would do is I would look at the Jesus of Hebrews, sat down, and I got no further than verse 3. So let's read Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. We'll maybe go to 4, just to see a flavor of what's to come. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for sin, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven, so he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. Wow. Now, if we read that slowly, our minds would be buzzing, wouldn't they? There are so many dramatic statements packed within those first few verses, and I'm just going to pick up 3 of them. And if I miss out your favorite statement from Hebrews, please forgive me. But you can still, the beauty of this is you can go home, you can download this off the internet, you can watch it, you can listen to it. But better than that, you can actually read the book of Hebrews for yourself, because that'll help us in our understanding. So here's the first thing for us. And we'll try that again. I'm not clicking for some reason there. He is who the prophets said he is. Thank you. in Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 and 2a. In the past, God spoke to our forefathers through the prophets at many times and in various ways, but in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son. Now what's being said here is that Jesus is greater than the Old Testament prophets. Now that much we should be able to grasp. As a statement, that's not too difficult. But why is he greater? Well, because he is exactly the one whom the Old Testament has foretold and pointed to, is Jesus. This is good news for us. We're not waiting for the Messiah to come. He's already come. Now, what are the odds? I don't know, I wouldn't like to say if anyone's a gambler here, but I'm not a gambling man. But what are the odds on Jesus being the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy? Surely anyone could have just turned up and claimed to be the one that the Old Testament prophets spoke of. Well, here's a little factoid for you. Did you know that the odds of you personally being struck by lightning on any given day of your life is 1 in 250 million? That's all right. Well, that's a relief, isn't it? But the odds of you being struck by lightning through your entire lifetime then goes down to 1 in 9,100. But that's still pretty extreme odds. In the Old Testament, we discover that there are 60 messianic prophecies concerning the coming of Jesus, recorded in over 300 passages of Scripture. And of these 60 prophecies, Jesus has fulfilled all of them except the ones, and this might shock you, there are some prophecies in the Old Testament Jesus has not yet fulfilled. Shocked by that? No, because there are prophecies in the Old Testament concerning his second coming. He hasn't fulfilled those yet because he hasn't returned. But of those concerning his birth, death, resurrection, and all those things, he has fulfilled all of them. And in fact, a number of years ago, some of you might have heard this, there was a book released in the 90s called Science Speaks. And it was written by two scientists, Stoner and Newman, and the book was based on the science of probability. And their actual work became attested by the American Scientific Affiliation. It's a bona fide scientific work, and they looked at the odds of Jesus fulfilling 8 of the 60 prophecies, just 8 of the 60. And the odds they came up with were this: 1 in 10 to the power of 17. That's 1 in all those noughts. Just 8 prophecies. Now that's a big number, isn't it? How do we then translate that to something we can understand? Well, how many of you have seen a £2 coin? Some of us haven't. How many of us have seen a £2 coin? We have. I didn't ask how many of us have seen a £50 note, because many of us would just keep our hands down. And some of you blokes, I'll say, how many of you ever see your paycheck? No, the wife does, it's just gone. I understand that. But a £2 coin, steady now, a £2 coin we can all relate to, can't we? How many £2 coins is that? Well, if we were to take that many £2 coins, that is like covering the entire United Kingdom 3.5 feet deep in stacks of £2 coins. That's a lot of £2 coins. That would mean that every space, every square inch, every millimeter of the country would be covered with stacks of £2 coins. And the odds of Jesus fulfilling just 8 prophecies, just 8, not 60, just 8, would be, if we were to blindfold Barbie this morning, we would spin her around 3 times, as you do. We would then say to her, you can set off in any direction from this church across the country, and we want you on your first attempt to pick up a £2 coins that we've marked with an X. That is the odds. That's amazing, isn't it? He is who the prophets have said he is. There cannot be any doubt in our mind when people turn around and say, oh, well, is Jesus real? He made it up. There were so many things that he could not control. He could not control who his mother was, yet she was a virgin. He could not control where he was born, yet he was born in the right place. He could not control the manner of his death, because that was out of his control, humanly speaking. And yet, those prophecies are fulfilled in him. The odds of that Well, the odds of that are beyond belief. And yet God did it through Jesus. So he is who he is because Hebrews says he's the fulfillment of what the Old Testament prophets have told us.